You know, it really is one of those things where you make a comment and it's like, be careful what you say because somebody might take you up on it. In any event, you know, Jonathan neglected the most important thing for the people at Lycoming College. I'm a graduate of Lycoming College, so you know I'm back at home, so to speak. One of the things that I did not expect tonight is the level of expertise in this room. And I don't know how many of you know each other, but there's people here from the gas industry, some of the largest producers in the state, DEP, just people that are concerned environmentally. So this is a pretty significant cross-section of people. And to tell you the truth, I guess I didn't ask, but I really did not expect this level of expertise. What I am not going to talk about, this is not, you know, how to lease property 101. You know, if you have those questions, see a lawyer. And we're way beyond that. I was asked, and when we talked about this, as I said, is like, I think that people ought to just take a look at where we were 10 years ago versus where we are today. What's happened in 10 years with the gas industry? And it's, if you stop and think about it, probably a little bit of history is appropriate. Anybody know when the first oil well was drilled in Pennsylvania? 1859, okay. Now, that was in the western part of the state. Another thing that you may not know, the first successful pipeline in the United States went from Corryville, which is 100 miles that way, to guess where? Williamsport, Pennsylvania. The first successful pipeline. They laid it in the winter. It was made mostly out of cast iron pipe, and it was above ground. And the reason that the pipeline was laid was to for competition with the railroads. At the time, virtually all the oil was being transported by rail, and the people that owned the rail lines controlled everything. And the pipeline, of course, we didn't have satellites, we didn't have drones, we didn't have anything like that. They laid the pipeline and virtually nobody knew it. And what happened is their rail cars then picked up the oil here in Williamsport and transported it primarily to Bayonne, New Jersey, and south to Philadelphia. Eventually, the pipeline was extended, and at one time there was actually a refinery here in Williamsport. So some of the oil was actually here. So when people talk about the gas industry or the energy industry in Pennsylvania, it's been here for a long time, maybe in some different forms, but it's been here. The original line is still in existence, by the way. It was put in the ground in 1879. Eventually, they buried it in the ground because they found out that when the sun shone on the type of pipe, it caused it to bend, so they buried it. Believe me, the pipelines today are not like that. But in any event, what's in it now is fiber optic cable. And so just think about that, how long ago that was and what's going on today. What people also, now let's go to 10 years ago. What people did not understand, and it was kind of my experience when the first companies came here, the first drilling companies came and put their hoses in the streams, and they found out we have this thing called the Department of Environmental Protection, and Pennsylvania is a very, very heavily regulated state, probably one of the most heavily regulated environmental states in the United States. But at the time, when all that started, most people don't realize we had about 70,000 conventional gas wells in Pennsylvania. 70,000. think about that. So what was going on is the primary part of the Marcellus Shale drilling happened in this area or in the eastern part of the state. And I remember talking to people from the western part of the state and saying, why are you people concerned about this? We've got 70,000 wells out here, and there's no problem. Well, the conventional drilling is entirely different, which is the 70,000 wells. Very, very simple way to explain it. Conventional drilling is punch a hole straight down. And everybody said, when they found out when they're drilling these holes, every once in a while, if you drill down deep enough, you get the little puff of gas, maybe 200 or 300 feet. Well, what happened is this thing called an unconventional drilling, where you drill horizontal. And that's the difference. Conventional wells are basically vertical wells. Unconventional wells are horizontal, go down so far, and the pipe turns and goes out now 18,000 feet. I'll mention hydraulic fracturing. Nobody around here had heard of hydraulic fracturing. Actually, it began, I think, in the late 40s. So this is not some new technique that the gas companies came up with. And I think the latest numbers about the number of hydraulic fracturing jobs that have actually been done is approaching 3 million. 3 million times it's been done in the, all over the world. I don't think that there's, to my knowledge, I don't think there's any natural gas produced anywhere that is not produced by some kind of hydraulic fracturing now. Fracturing itself, remember I said hydraulic, meaning using water, but that was different. Fracturing has been around since the 1860s. And guess how they fractured wells then? Dynamite. You drop dynamite down the hole and just blow it up, or nitroglycerin. And there was one called, it was a exploding torpedo. Apparently you just drop this thing down the hole and blow it up, and that's the way the fracturing was happening. So when we talk about this whole idea of fracturing, and it's some new evil thing, it's been going on for whatever it is, since 1865 or in that long ago. The horizontal drilling aspect, and you understand, I'm assuming that everybody in this room, I know that all the gas company people do know that horizontal drilling is like, the way it was first explained to me is, remember all the cars that used to have antennas that you could bend? Well, that's exactly what the pipe does. It goes down, bends, and goes way out. And that has been probably the biggest, but for horizontal drilling, the gas industry would not exist the way that we know it here today. What's the effect been in Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania right now is the second largest gas producer in the United States. I mean, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, is Pennsylvania going to be in competition with Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Alaska, I'd have said, for what? But we have almost 8,000 producing wells, the unconventional wells. What's really interesting over the last, and I think this number is correct, since I think it's 2013 to today, the production has increased by 80%. We are now producing here in Pennsylvania about 15 billion cubic feet per day. 15 billion cubic feet. And you can do the math, multiply that by 365, it comes out to like 5 trillion, whatever that number is, and how many zeros that has. 20% of the United States, as I said, 20% of the gas produced in the United States now comes out of Pennsylvania. And the number of counties involved, obviously, Lycoming County is one of the larger producers. I represent 5 counties. I represent Union County, Lycoming County, Bradford, Sullivan, and the western part of Susquehanna. I feel bad for Union County. Union County has no gas. They have no shale. I don't know, maybe they have something else. They have Bucknell, anyway. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. The 4 counties that I said, Lycoming, Bradford, Sullivan, and Susquehanna, are some of the largest. All of them are in the top 10 producers in the state. Now, we are in competition now because the Southwest, there's more drilling right now going on in the Southwest than here. A lot more permits, and a lot of their gas is wet gas, which means it has multiple parts to it. It has all the anes, in addition to methane, and butane, propane, whatever else, all these things that can be stripped out and then used in various other products or chemicals. As I said, 33 of 67 counties are involved in the gas industry. And of course, you know where those 33 counties are. It's rural Pennsylvania. A little factor, 73% of the population in Pennsylvania lives in 19 counties. And just think about this. That means 27% lives in the other 48 counties. And you know where we are. We're in that minority, but we have the gas. So one of the problems we run into as a legislator is that the majority of the population lives not in the gas industry area. So we're always kind of fighting that battle with people who don't know what the industry is, don't understand it, and probably really don't appreciate the impact that the gas industry has had and has on Pennsylvania. The industry here in 2011, or around 2010, 2011 time period, we had somewhere around 110 rigs drilling. I think the latest number I heard, and I know there are drillers here who are much more expert about this than I am, I think we have 33 in the state now. However, 10 years ago, when I first became associated in any respect with the gas industry, it took about 45 days to drill a well. Now it takes, depending on who wants to puff up that I can drill a hole faster than the next guy, it's anywhere 6 to 7 days. So just think about that. They have reduced, become expert enough, new techniques, new equipment. When the drilling companies came here, they brought Texas-sized equipment, and we have Pennsylvania roads. I remember the first winter, I mean, it was like up in Bradford County, they were pulling things around with bulldozers to get them up the roads because remember, historically, some of you may not remember that we had a governor by the name of Pinchot a long time ago in the 1930s, and he ran on the idea of get the farmers out of the mud. So if you look at, Pennsylvania has more paved miles of road than New York, New Jersey, and all of New England. Why? Because we paved every deer trail, turkey path, and everything. What did we pave it with? We paved it with a thing called a pie crust. And when you run, a 25 or a 30-ton truck over a pie crust road, guess what? The pie crust just rolls right up in the wheels, and so that's what happened 10 years ago. Everybody has changed. As I said, the drilling companies have changed their equipment. They made it more adaptable to Pennsylvania's roads, drilling, what we need to do here. Every time I go on a drilling rig, I learn something new. And the last time I was on one was in Susquehanna County, and just some of the new techniques, some of the things that they do, that they can tell you exactly where that drill bit is, even though it's 5,000 or 7,000 feet down, and it may be 18,000 feet out. They can tell you exactly where the end of it is. So it has really been, that part of it has really changed a lot. In addition, when I first became associated with the industry, it was a big, most of the laterals when they went horizontal were, I don't know, 3,500 feet. I think 5,000 feet was cause for a celebration. Well, now the laterals are anywhere 10, 12, 15,000. I've heard 18,000 or even farther than that. That's good environmentally because there's less of an environmental impact because for every one of those hole or every 5,000 feet, for example, that's one less well that had to be drilled on the surface. So environmentally, that's very good. Economically, from the impact fee, that's bad, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And because less holes mean less impact fee. You've all heard about the impact fee, I think. I know the county commissioners have. The city of Williamsport has. If I'm not mistaken, the city of Williamsport gets around $500,000, I think. The county gets several million. The impact fee was signed on Valentine's Day and by Governor Corbett in 2012. Since then, it's generated about $1.2 billion. And the impact fee, let me just, I don't want to bore you with this, but a little bit about it. It's based on the number of holes or the holes that are drilled. It is not a severance tax. It's based on once a well is spudded in or its drilling is started, it generates a fee, which at today's prices over the life of the well would generate about $250,000 roughly. And that has nothing to do, that fee is due whether that well happens to produce 1 cubic foot of gas. It doesn't matter. If the hole's drilled, payment's due. And it's generated that amount of money over that period of time. Now, the good part for me has been my district, the 23rd Senatorial District, has received about 20% of that money. We've, over the years, since 2012, we've received about $240 million in my district. Now, I got to tell you, if I went as a legislator, as a senator for this area and said, I need $240 million over the next 5 or 6 years, I guarantee you, nobody would even listen. So it has been a huge benefit to rural Pennsylvania. And there are legislators from the more urban areas actually have said, we don't know how you guys managed to get this through, but it was a great bill for rural Pennsylvania. And it benefits virtually every municipality, the counties, the city, Loyalsock Township. I mean, everybody, if you are within a certain distance of a well, you share. Even Union County, which has no gas, they get something. I forget what it is, some small, as a result of the way that the money is split up. And yes, Philadelphia gets money too. So we had to pay Philadelphia in order to get some here, but that's the way it works. I'll tell you, you've all probably heard about a severance tax. The difference between the impact fee and a severance tax, the severance tax is based on a volume production. And remember I said the volume in Pennsylvania is gone up, up, up. If you just think about it logically, any financing, the fee schedule based on the number of holes that are drilled, eventually you're going to run out of places to drill holes. Or you're going to have it, it's going to be like a pin cushion. You're going to have holes, you're going to be done with that. So I think that we need to start looking at something that's based on volume. especially with the volume that we're producing. And the one thing that at least I've gotten out of this for the companies that are in the business of drilling, our wells here have been much more productive than probably anybody ever anticipated when they were looking at the geology and studying records and making predictions. I know initially 10 years ago we talked about there would be a curve like this, and there would be almost a 50% drop off after the first year, but then a real long tail. Well, that hasn't happened, and which I think is evident as a result of the production. And we have some, maybe one of the biggest producing wells in the United States, I think, in Susquehanna County. It's just been, it's amazing what's here. And, to some extent, you have to credit the ingenuity of the drilling companies and their engineers and geologists and everything, how they figured out how to do some of these things here over a fairly short period of time. What other effects have occurred in 10 years? Anybody, I don't even remember how many hotels have been built here in Lycoming County. I think it's 5 or 6. Bradford County had, I think there's 3 or 4 in Bradford County. I grew up in this area. I've lived here. I was born in Williamsport, so I've lived here all my life. I can't remember prior to 10 years ago when the gas industry came, the last time anybody built a hotel. There was no reason to do it. Now, that's one thing that's happened. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Panda power plants. We have Panda Liberty in Bradford County. It's an 829 megawatt power plant. That's enough electricity to power 1 million homes. We have Panda Patriot over at Montgomery, which is identical. It's a sister power plant to the one in Bradford County. We have Panda Hummel Station down at Hummel's Wharf, which is the largest coal to gas conversion project in the United States right now. And if you drive down that road and look at what they're doing there, it is just amazing. What's interesting is those plants are all powered by nothing but natural gas. In 2000, natural gas was responsible for about 1% of the production of electric generated in Pennsylvania. Today, it's over 30%. Just think about that. Of all the electricity generated in Pennsylvania, 1/3 of it now comes from natural gas. And natural gas has, I'm chairman of the Coal Caucus. The Coal Caucus, I'm a big believer that we have to have diversity in energy, and we need everything. We need nuclear, coal can't be wasted, and I think that there's technologies to make that a viable energy source. But then we also have gas in this, and the gas which has come online and it's replaced a lot of bad emissions that have come out of the coal industry. And that's one of the reasons we have some of the lowest greenhouse gases now that we have ever experienced, and that has been very, very good for the environment. There's also there's another gas-fired power plant north of Berwick. It's actually north of the nuclear power plant, which would be virtually identical to Panda Patriot here. One other thing that's happened here in Pennsylvania as a result of the gas industry, there are so many things, but one other huge thing is the Shell cracker plant, which is coming into Beaver County. And I forget, I hear all kind of estimates as to what that plant is. It's somewhere between I've heard 5 billion, I've heard 10, 15. I'm not sure anybody knows what the cost of that's going to be. But the cracker plant will take wet gas and process it into various chemicals. The impact on Pennsylvania, we think, hopefully, that will generate a whole new chemical industry. And I will tell you, for any students that are here, I know that Penn College has an extensive plastics program. We're already talking to Shell as to what we can do and what we should be doing here to train people in the event that the chemical and the plastics industry expand, how we think it will. So that's just, I mean, that could be just a game changer, I think is the way that it's described. Some things we still need to work on, and I work on them. 50% of Pennsylvania households don't have access to natural gas. They don't. We're sitting on one of the largest deposits in the world, and if you look at it, that's a tremendous thing. Where I live in Loyalsock Township, we just got gas. We did not have gas because that area was developed at a time like 20, 25 years ago when the predictions were in 20 years, we would be out of gas in the world. So nobody, when they did developments, they didn't think about that. I was in Sullivan County today and talked to the commissioners in Sullivan County. Their biggest lament is they don't have any they're drilling wells all over the place and there's no natural gas distribution. Nobody in Sullivan County has natural gas. They don't have access to it. So a challenge for us as a legislator is how do we get gas? How do we get the infrastructure? And infrastructure is the key to this thing, and that's also why our production is going up, that we're bringing pipelines online to be able to get it to market. We can drill all the holes in the world, and if we can't get it out of here, and especially, part of our country is like begging for natural gas. And we have this roadblock. I'd probably get in trouble for saying this, but anyway. It's called New York. New York won't approve a pipeline to get gas to New England. And New England is shutting down their nuclear power plant. So we're not sure what they're going to do. I know that there are some people that have thought about running, there's also compressed natural gas, putting it in tanker trucks and trucking it to New England. Now, what would you rather see out there? Would you rather see it go by a pipeline or a truck on the road? I think, I'd opt out for the pipeline. Pipelines that get a lot of criticism now, but they've been around, well, as I said, 1879 was the first pipeline that brought oil here. There are so many pipelines, most people don't know that they're here. They have been around for a century, and it's clearly the safest way to transport oil or gas or any other things. I have a pipeline in my backyard. It is a liquid pipeline that pumps diesel fuel, gasoline, and everything from, I think it goes from Marcus Hook to Buffalo. And it's in my backyard. So when people tell me, well, you don't have a pipeline, yeah, I do. I have one in my backyard. And the worst part about it is they came through and had to cut down the biggest tree on the property. But in any event, the infrastructure pipelines is a big need. Issues that we have out there, I'll tell you, the severance tax is always an issue. We have had times in the gas industry, and I understand this, I'm not criticizing, they're protecting their own interests. They fought it to a large extent. We've also had, there are groups of legislators who have taken a no tax pledge and said, we're not going to pass a tax no matter what it is. If it has the word tax in it, we're not doing it. I think that's very short-sighted. This is something that we need to take advantage of to the best that we can, and we need to be reasonable and fair about it. Nobody's looking to put these people out of business or anything, but I think that's something we need to look at. The other thing that we need to look at is what the state can do as far as a policy to encourage the use of maybe natural gas or byproducts of natural gas as feedstock. When I mean feedstock for the chemical industry, we're doing things like that. And especially the chemical industry, I think eventually, 10 years from now, we may be looking at Pennsylvania as being a large or one of the major chemical producers in the country. So that's what's been going on for 10 years. And I don't know, Jonathan, whether you want me to ask whether there's questions, do you want to talk to me, or what do you want to do?
Thank you for that perspective, definitely, and let's give him sharing it. If you'd like, let's sit and talk for a few minutes about kind of how that perspective ties into our broader energy future overall and how you think of that. And then we'll open up after 10 or 15 minutes to a broader discussion. Thank you for moving.
You have to do your own work here, too.
We're an efficient place. Okay.
You want right or left? I'll take right.
You choose the right. It's still good. Okay. Okay. Technology problems. So is it on? I guess it is. One of the goals of the Center for Energy in the Future is to challenge our students, challenge ourselves, and really challenge the public to think about where are we and where are we headed, and how do we make sure that one of the big challenges that humanity faces, whether that's local level, state level, national, global level, that we think through the really important challenges of how do we make sure that we provide ourselves now and forever affordable, reliable, sustainable sources of energy. And as you said, maybe across many, many different forms of it simultaneously in a way that will evolve. And so I suppose my question, now that you've given us a perspective of how you see natural gas in Pennsylvania evolving over the last 10 years and what the next set of challenges are, what do you see as our energy future? And by our, I guess I leave it to you. Do you think of it from the perspective of rural Pennsylvania or Pennsylvania as a whole, or as the United States, or even globally? From where we are now, what's the mix in the future? And what do you see as the biggest challenges for helping us achieve that mix?
I think that one of the things that Pennsylvania does not have an energy plan or an overall energy plan, but don't feel alone. The United States doesn't have an overall energy plan either. So I think that we need to really take a look at what we can do to develop energy in general in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is really pretty unique in the whole energy plan. Not only do we have natural gas, we have coal. I mean, we have nuclear. We have geothermal. We have hydro. We still have people that burn wood. I don't know of any other place in the United States that has that combination of energy. We're energy rich, and I think that one of the things that people that are a lot smarter than me should be doing or can do is think about how we can capitalize on that. Pennsylvania is really a unique place in the United States or in the world, and maybe we need a cheerleader to just build up what the state is and what we can do here and what can be done, what has been done. I would love to see that happen. I'd capitalize on as much as I could on the natural gas. We export a lot of coal out of Pennsylvania right now. We could use that. We need to. I toured some of the oil refineries at Marcus Hook, and the owner asked me, well, he said, what can I do to help you? And I said, you don't have to do anything to help me. You can help yourself. Get your other legislators in your area, because I'll be your best friend. We have gas. I want to sell gas. And if we can build pipelines or whatever to help the people in Philadelphia and give them jobs and sell our product to people in Pennsylvania, then why shouldn't we be doing that? And I'm not sure we're doing that.
If I'm hearing you right, then our energy future is one that provides energy to other places that are less energy rich by taking kind of an advantage of our own economic opportunities as a Commonwealth?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we export all of it. I mean, we're exporting electricity now. We become an overall exporter of electricity, but we should be using it here also. And I think that we need to encourage people to. We need to create an economic climate here for businesses to come and take advantage of the energy that we have in Pennsylvania. And, everybody says we don't have a real business-friendly climate here in Pennsylvania. And it's probably true to some extent. I think we're working on trying to modify some of those things, and we're working on it. We acknowledge it, but we have a long way to go.
What knowledge do we not have as a public, as policymakers, et cetera, that prevents us from helping achieve that kind of future that you think is our potential?
Remember I said that 73% of the population lives in 19 counties, and the other 27% lives in 48 counties. One of the things that I run into all the time is that the people in the urban areas don't understand what rural Pennsylvania has, or the assets that we have here. They have, for example, they were always, if you talk to anybody in the urban areas, they're against pipelines. They want a severance tax. They think that we should tax these gas people, and environmentally they're ruining the world or ruining the state. Is that true? No, I don't think it's true, but that's what we run into. And since that's where the majority of the population is, it's the same argument that some of the people in the more urban areas don't like farms. Well, I don't care about farms. I'll just go to the grocery store and buy stuff. Where do you think that comes from? That's the same attitude. And we laugh about that here, but that attitude is very real. And that's something that we fight. In the legislature, we fight that all the time. It's the urban versus rural. And that is a very real challenge that we face with a lot of the things that we do. If you took my Senate district and kind of superimposed it, my Senate district is 3,600 square miles. It's the second largest geographic Senate district in the state. If you superimpose that over the Philadelphia region, there are 21 Senate districts in that same geographic area. So that's what I face as a legislator, So I have to make a lot of friends in order to get something to happen.
I think a nice segue is a question that our last speaker last semester asked. Is Barbara Heim, another Lycoming alum. She was a vice president for human relations for the BG group and at one time. And one of the questions she wanted to ask, and she didn't know who the next speaker would be because it was the end of the semester, and she asked specifically, what can be done to change public perception and negativity then for the oil and gas industry, an industry she worked for?
Hey, that's a really good question. I don't know. I think that, one of the things that the gas industry has not done very well is this little phrase. You hear it all the time. The governor uses it, that Pennsylvania is the only state that doesn't have a severance tax, the only major gas producing state that doesn't have a severance tax. I don't know how I would have handled that. All I can say is that I'm not sure that the gas industry has been able to respond to that very well. My response is this: we're the only state that has an impact fee. But that's just ignored. I don't know how we educate people, and we've made things, I guess, in a way, is too easy, because in the more urban areas, they don't have to worry about having gas. They have gas. They go and they turn it on, and there's no thought as to how it comes out of the ground, the pipelines and the distribution system, and the money that's involved and the risk that's involved in getting that product to them to make their life a lot easier, or our lives a lot easier. Maybe it's just education. The more people that we can educate, the more people that participate in events like this, I think that's probably the way to do it.
Kind of return to this question of the future and what it looks like and how we get there, but building off on what you just said, if you're wrong, if we can't, if what you see as the goal does not happen, what are the consequences then?
Oh, I think the consequences are really not good for Pennsylvania as a whole, as an economic, viable economic entity in the United States, and being a real player in the energy market. I think that's what's going to happen, and I really hate to see that. I think we should just be doing more. We need to have a real cheerleader for Pennsylvania.
I want to shift gears a little bit. We've got students in the room, and some of the students are maybe interested in careers that would involve energy. Some of them may be working for some of the people also in the room. Some of them people may be outside protesting some of the people in the room. Who knows? So here's my question. We're in a liberal arts college, liberal arts setting you know very well. What's one thing that students in this setting should be doing now to better prepare themselves to engage in the world of energy, maybe just as citizens, not just, but as citizens, or two, as individuals looking to build a career in some way connected to energy?
It's interesting question, especially from a liberal arts school. I always look at a liberal arts school as training ground it's where you go to take courses that you will never take again in your life. But it's where you're exposed to philosophy or whatever else, all these different things. It's kind of like a base. So I would look at it as like you just need to have a really good base. I think the sciences, or even participating in some of the sciences, is a good background. And beyond that, if you have good grades and you can sell yourself, you can probably find a job in a lot of these places where people will, they will hire you and train you to do the job. I mean, I remember, I'll use George Stark is here with Cabot Energy. He was a lobbyist. I forget what he did before, but he came in my office about 8 years ago in Harrisburg, and he said, "I'm going to take this job with this gas company." And at the time, I will say this, that Cabot Energy probably had the reputation, they were the poster child of what not to do. And I asked him whether he had a death wish. I said, you surely must want to end your career here. And I'll tell you, that company now is probably one of the premier companies in the state. So here's a guy who was doing something totally different, had a chance to, the door opened, and I find that with a lot of things, including politics. When the door opens, you just have to be willing to take the chance to step in. And, sometimes you're out of your comfort zone. So if you've got I go back to the liberal arts education, if you have a good base, you're pretty flexible. You can do a lot of different things because hopefully you've learned how to think a little bit. And I guess that's it. Because when the door opens, just be willing to take some risk in your life.
Do you mind if we turn that into the next commercial for the college? I think that was well said. And so to wrap up this kind of segment of everything, our next speaker, and let me advertise here this for a second, our next speaker will be next week on November 14th, Mark Zibist, who's an energy advocate for the Natural Resources Defense Council, will likely present us a bit different perspective on some of these same questions. And I encourage everyone, the same people in this room and more, to attend that talk as well, so that we can continue this conversation. 7 o'clock in Jane Schultz's room of the Wirtz Student Center. But knowing that he's our next speaker, and I don't even know if you know him, what questions should we ask him about these issues that will help our students and everybody else in the audience to better understand our energy future?
I do know Mark. I know Mark's father. Mark's father is an attorney here in Williamsport. And I have talked to him. We do look at things a bit differently. I guess my question to him is, if we don't have the gas industry, the benefits of the gas industry, it has reduced the pollution. If you follow anything that's happened in New York City, they go to great extent to tell you how they've reduced pollution in New York by cutting down the use of heating oil. Oh, what are they using? They're using natural gas. And I know I think that Mark is more aligned with let's skip the natural gas and go directly to renewables. And we'll use wind and solar until wind and solar. I think that wind and solar have a place. I find it a little bit ironic that gas or byproducts from the gas industry are used to make solar panels, by the way. So without the gas industry, we wouldn't have solar panels. Solar panels also, from my perspective as the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee, present a huge disposal problem which nobody has addressed yet. So in any event, the gas industry is so critical right now to everything that we do. I don't see how we can survive without it. And to be very blunt, I'll tell you this. Every piece of clothing that you people have on went through some process using gas, natural gas. Whether it's heating or drying it or manufacturing it, the material or whatever. I bet you all have a cell phone. The cell phones were manufactured with products from gas. And you all charge it. And what I just said, the electricity is generated. So you get in your car, the dashboard is made out of ethane byproducts from natural gas. So what I tell people, if you're really serious about that you hate the gas industry so much and it's so worthless, then here's what you do. You throw away your cell phone, take off all your clothes, and walk. So otherwise, don't be a hypocrite about it. I'm not saying that, we need to be respectful of the environment, but we need to be a little bit practical about what we do. And I don't think, I've always said, my motto has been, I don't think that the environment and economics are mutually exclusive terms. So that's kind of the message. And I think I told Mark that.
Okay. So is there a question mark at the end of repeating that for Mark? All right. So thank you for putting up with my questions. Let me open it up then for others. And I'm going to always give a student advantage over others. So I will get to others, but anytime I see a student hand up, I'm going to bring over the mic.
Well, thank you for showing up first. And I want to preface this question by first saying that I'm from New Jersey, so I'm pretty unfamiliar with the area and the impact this has had on the area. So my question's focused on, you mentioned the impact fees, you mentioned the indirect jobs that were created from this industry. How many of these industry jobs have gone to Pennsylvania residents and Pennsylvania students, and what has been the direct impact on the industry?
I mean, I can't tell you how many have gone to students. I mean, they're literally, we're talking about thousands of jobs. And it's not the direct jobs anymore. In the drilling rigs and things, it's like the indirect jobs. For example, the power plant down at, when the power plants have been built, each one of them, there were like 500 people working on them. And is it something where they move? Yes, they do, but that's no different than road construction, where they do a project here and then go on. But and the side effects of something like that, the trickle-down effect or the multiplier that goes into a community, I don't have those numbers and stuff, but you raise an interesting question now, is the impact here. I told you about the hotels, the number of hotels that have been built here. I think that somebody asked me at one time what I projected or what I thought how the gas industry would change this area. I'm a native of this area. I said, I really don't think it's going to have that significant effect, not on the way people live. Now, there's no question, there have been some people, some new millionaires created. There's no question about that. But I'm talking about the way that people live, the way that we look at the things. And I don't think that it has really changed. It's not a lot different than it ever was here. It's been assimilated. Yeah, we see the gas trucks or whatever, Cabot or around, and we just don't think about it. At least I don't. And I think that I'm probably pretty much the way that other people think here.
Hold it if you'd like.
Yep. My name's Bill Sackler, and thank you for coming here tonight. The question I have, I'm up in the mountains where they have this natural gas. I'm curious, if I don't sign a contract, can they make me? And I talked to him before the meeting, and he said, no, they can't make you sign. But my concern is my neighbors sign, and what happens if somehow goes wrong and it pollutes my well? Who pays for it? I have a home that's worth almost $200,000, and I'm retired. Who's going to pay for that? And another thing is, you just talked about all these wells, the pin cushions being punched in the earth. I'm concerned. We have a fault line runs up the East Coast. I'm concerned. It's just like anything else. The more holes you punch in the earth, the weaker down in the earth it gets. And another concern I have is the water. 8 to 9 million gallons of water is drawn. I guess the way I understand it, some of it's drawn out of the Susquehanna River and other places, okay? I'm concerned about that. Then I found out up Lycoming Creek, there's a log place there. They were bringing this residue up, and they were putting it in this steel building. I kept an eye on it, and they kept it in there. And when it rains, the water goes in there. Where does the liquid go? Well, right down in the earth. But they take it out of there. I saw them go in there with dump trucks and backhoes and load the trucks, but they leave that stuff in there for weeks at a time. I'm concerned about our environment, like everybody else should be.
All right, thank you. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not going to. I'll give you a couple of comments that you need to talk to a lawyer about your issues, the legal issues about We don't have any forced pooling in Pennsylvania right now, or I'm not with respect to Marcellus Shale. Actually, I got to tell you, if it were up to me, I would probably support forced pooling. You wouldn't like that, but I would, because it really does hinder the way that some other people can recover the assets that they have. But having said that, I cannot address your fears. If you're afraid, I can walk out of this building tonight and get, I'm going to Harrisburg when I leave here. I don't know what's going to happen. I can be so scared that I don't do anything.
No, I'm not scared, I'm just concerned.
Well, that's a word that's a word I don't use very often because you can't target a particular problem. And I told you that the 2,500 feet, if there's a problem with your well, and I told you that you should have your well tested, you said you've already had that done. That's good. You have a baseline to go from. I don't know. It sounds to me like you've looked into all these things, and somewhere you just have to say, this is the risk, this is the benefit. Do I want to do that? And if the answer is no, then don't do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. And if there's a problem, we have DEP, which, I never heard until the gas industry came that DEP was too friendly. I mean, most people dislike them and don't want them to come near them, but, they're not tough enough on the gas industry. But anyway, that's the best I can tell you. And I don't mean to be facetious about it or anything, but you just need to weigh your risk, and you've done a lot of research. Trust your judgment.
Good evening, Senator.
Good evening.
So for our class, every student has been writing a paper on alternative and renewable energy. My topic is biofuel, algae, and biodiesel. And I'm aware that 9 years ago, the state made a bill to have a surplus for biodiesel. Where do you see biodiesel in the state's future as a renewable source that has potential to be economically and environmentally beneficial?
All the biodiesel plants that I know of aren't in business anymore. And the reason is because of we have such a glut of energy in natural gas is biodiesel, and it's not viable anymore. Economically, it's not. There's a county commissioner in Union County who makes his own biodiesel. He buys all diesel. He has Preston Boop. He's really a pretty unique individual. He has an organic farm. All of his farm equipment, he makes the diesel, and all of his vehicles, he does it. But I think that the answer right now is that the economies of it just don't make it viable. In the perfect world, would we use this and use all of our waste? Yes, absolutely. You want to see in the whole energy cycle, learning to use our waste is the epitome of what we should be doing. Like Lycoming County at the landfill, they use methane generated by the rotting garbage to power some electric generating engines. It's the perfect, and they use the heat then from that. I'll give you another example along the same lines that you're talking about, and like I said, I think that you just need to use your waste. The Northern Tier landfill in Bradford County, here's the way it works. They put the garbage in, the garbage rots, it makes methane gas. The methane powers a generator that makes electricity, and as a result of that, it makes a lot of heat. They run it through a heat exchanger that heats water that then circulates throughout the property, and heats all the buildings, and it heats the area where they hydroponically grow lettuce. And I guarantee you, I'm not sure which restaurants here in Williamsport serve landfill lettuce, but landfill lettuce is very good. And they have this huge facility where they grow lettuce. And that's the way I think what you're talking about. And I think that it's a good idea. Just right now, the economies aren't there to make it a viable thing to do. By the way, go to the northern tier, you can buy landfill lettuce, you can go to the office, they have a big cooler there.
Senator, our Pennsylvania Planning Association has recommended revising different grants to encourage expanded use of natural gas in a whole variety of economic categories. So my question is, have these Department of Community and Economic Development grants and the Commonwealth Financing Authority grants been revised to do that, to encourage that expanded use?
Good question. It's something I would support, but I don't know the answer to it, whether we've revised it or whether, I think I told you before, there have not been a lot of comments about that. And it's something that we would support. We've tried to find money repeatedly to put in the budget to expand the natural gas distribution lines. Because the way our system is set up here, it's kind of a pay-as-you-go, and UGI is the major distribution company in this area. And it's like if you want gas, you have to pay to get the line. Well, what we would like to do is encourage the expansion of the distribution lines. So the more of those ideas like that, and especially in rural Pennsylvania, I would love to, and the question came up today with the Sullivan County Commissioners, how do we get gas in Sullivan County? They have 6,400 people. But, you know, why can't we, there's some way to do it, whether it's CNG or something. So give me some of those things, Jerry. I'll be happy to work on them.
With a lot of responses to the environmental issue and oil compared to renewable energy, it's an economics issue. Where do we draw the line of where money comes over people's health, methane in the air, people's waters catching on fire? Where do we draw the line of profit over people?
Well, I'm not sure some of your comments are really accurate. Where's the methane in, or where's the water catching on fire?
There was incidents of methane. I mean, water is catching on fire, and methane is reportedly from, I think it was Duquesne University, maybe, did a study from 2011 to 2015, and they saw drastic increases in methane in Pennsylvania.
Actually, methane levels in Pennsylvania are lower than they've ever been. So I'm not sure about that. The other thing about the water catching on fire, I remember I grew up in this county. It is not unusual to drill wells here and get methane. There's surface methane here. So, you know, the issue, what's your, I'm not sure if we don't let the economy kind of adjust itself, we want to start tinkering with it. How do we tinker with it? With taxes. I mean, somehow you have to provide services, in the way that our system works, or capitalism works, is that, you know, the market adjusts itself. And we have regulations. We have done some pretty strict environmental regulations here that I think guide where industry goes. The industry is, now the people from the industry that are in this room these are significant players in this field. It is not something where some fly-by-night outfit can come in And they're the ones that cause the most of the environmental problems. It's not the major players. Major players in the environmental world know how to do things, and they don't cut corners because it's not in their own financial or economic interest to do that. The people who try to, I know that DEP especially has had more problems with are smaller operators, I think, not big ones. I don't know. I mean, it's like the issue that you ask, I'm not sure that there's an answer to it. When does money overcome something else? It's like picking a college. When does money overcome, you know, you try and do the best that you can with what you have. I'm not sure that there's an answer to that. I don't think, though, that some of the things that you've talked about really happen here in Pennsylvania right now.
Open it up for others. Other question?
He wants to talk about the Hellbender.
In 1775, which precedes my birthday, Pennsylvania was almost entirely virgin forest.
Yeah.
And in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the timber industry came in. As you well know, Williamsport was part of that, and cut all that forest down,
Yep.
except for a very few small parcels. And since that time, a lot of the forest landscape has recovered or has gone through a recovery. And now the gas industry is chopping up a lot of these large tracts of intact forest into smaller pieces, which can't support the kind of biodiversity that was there before the gas industry came in. So my question is that how do you feel about preserving large intact tracts of forest and keeping the gas industry from moving into those areas so that we can keep some of that ecological and biological diversity here in Pennsylvania, which is a rich part of our heritage?
Yeah, I'm not sure. What do you mean by chopping up the forest?
Well, when we take a piece of intact forest and you put in drilling pads and staging areas and pipelines,
Okay.
you take an intact area and make it into smaller parcels, and that doesn't support the same high biodiversity that you have without chopping it up.
Okay, all right. I just didn't understand what you were saying. Let me go back to the forest a little bit. The area, you know, Pennsylvania at one time had hemlock trees to the point where the black forest. It was called the black forest because the sun couldn't even get through, so underneath it was almost totally dark all the time. And you're right, the logging industry came here, they clear cut it. And that's when Williamsport was made and the millionaires, Williamsport at one point had more millionaires than any place in the world. And, you know, here in this little town, and it was the lumber industry. You know what the byproduct of that clear cutting was? Pennsylvania hardwoods. Pennsylvania hardwoods are now known internationally as for the quality. So I'm not justifying this, but I'm saying that here's something that everybody thought was a disaster at the time, turned into a huge asset that would never have existed but for the fact that those forests were cut. Now, I understand what you're talking about. I think that one of the things that happens to prevent that splitting up or division that or sectionalizing it is the fact that longer laterals require less drill pads. And that's happened in the last 10 years that originally there would be one well drilled off of one pad. Well, I'm not sure how many wells they can drill off a pad now, anywhere a dozen off of the same pad. And that's why the impact or things that have happened here in the Williamsport or Lycoming County area have changed. If you remember 10 years ago, to some extent there was kind of a Wild West attitude here. I mean, there were pickup trucks from Texas and Oklahoma and, every motel was filled, and you see people out all the time in dirty coveralls and all this stuff. You don't see that today. And one of the reasons is because the people at that time, we needed people to build the well pads and the roads and all that. Well, now we found out we don't need a whole lot more well pads. We can say on the same well pad, and we can drill a dozen wells off of this one well pad, which kind of concentrates, and that's one of the things that I've said that the gas industry, I think, has learned over this time is, okay, we only need one road now, where we would have needed 12 roads 10 years ago. So I think to some extent that is being addressed. The other thing too, though, that hunters tell me that where they go to look for deer is go where the pipelines are, because that's where the the feed plot is, where the deer will learn to go there. And a lot of the things, I don't know whether DEP covers the right-of-way and tells you what to plant on it. They do. They tell you what grasses and trees and everything else to plant on those right-of-ways to attract wildlife to them. So I think that the answer to your question, I think it is being addressed.
I would love maybe one or two more questions, and I would love very much the last question to come from a student. So let me let you have second to last, and put the students on the spot for one more.
Thank you, Senator Yao, for being here. Pennsylvania being an agricultural state, in the future, and I saw you at the farm show on TV and so on, and so I know your heart is there, as well as us who have relatives who were in farming and grandpas and on, and the family farm, and all the produce that comes from the state. In the future, what picture would you paint for us that perhaps the gas industry might also coexist and help support the ongoing sustenance of the acreage of a family farm? I mean, is there anything there that you can elaborate on that might help that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I think it's pretty well documented that the gas industry has probably done more to save the family farms in this area than anything. I'll give you this, and certain things and certain people I run into say things that stick in my mind. I ran into a farmer a few years ago who I will not forget him. He's wearing his John Deere hat, and his comment was this. He had, I think, 2 or 3 gas wells on his property. And he said, farming's a hell of a lot more fun when you have money. Now, or the other one I've heard, how long will people farm in this area? They'll farm until they run out of money. So I don't think there's any question. The gas industry in this area has been really the savior of the family farms. I travel around up in Bradford County a lot, and there's some very large farms. Farms there that are milking 800 head. And they're coexisting. It's like it's given us a base of something that we never had before, and we could not rely on it. And so it's been a huge positive for rural Pennsylvania in general.
Which student's going to take one for the team? For our last question. All right, Allie, you got saved by the bell here, because I was coming to you.
Hello, I just want to ask, the first well, an oil well is drilled from Pennsylvania, and now there's not too much oil in Pennsylvania, and now it's the gas just time. What do you think, after gas, which resources we will use in Pennsylvania?
I'm not sure I understood it.
Now is the gas time And then what's the next thing? You
Oh.
said maybe after 20 years, there will no more gas. And
Well-
what's next?
It's not going to be during the lifetime of anybody in this room or the next generation because, and let me tell you something about the oil well, the first oil well. There's still oil being produced in Pennsylvania. And it's really, Pennsylvania has a very interesting economy when it comes to oil. And it's not the type of thing that some people may have seen in the movie Giant, where there's a gusher coming out of the ground and all that. That's not it. There are oil wells in the western part of the state, and I forget what town it is. It might be Bradford. There's a McDonald's. You drive in the McDonald's drive-in, and in the back of the parking lot, not even in the parking lot, right next to the building is an oil well today. And it's a producing oil well. But these oil wells produce maybe a gallon a day, and that's it. With the gas industry, there's we're talking about the Marcellus Shale right now, which is a layer that's, I don't know, anywhere from 5,000 or 6,000 feet down, and it varies anywhere from 200 or 300 feet thick. Below that, there's another layer of probably gas called the Utica. And there have been some wells drilled into the Utica, and my understanding is that they have been very, very productive. So we're talking about a couple of centuries. So, you know, and everybody even talking about the environmental challenges and stuff that are going on out there, we have probably at least 100 years to hopefully figure out some things environmentally and everything else. It's not like doomsday's tomorrow. So the gas industry, I think in Pennsylvania with the techniques that are here, is here for many, probably a century at least.
With us, your perspective this evening. Let's give him a hand for sticking it out. As we said earlier, these are great mixed tables. If you want to take a little bit of time, I don't think anybody from security will be kicking us out. But thank you for coming, and thank you for good questions and participating in this process. Remember, on the 14th, we'll have our next speaker in for the Center for Energy and Future here at Lycoming College, and I encourage you to come back then. So thank you very much.
Thank you.